Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument, hosted by the militant, Marxist, anti-Santa, Martin Bradbury. The Bradbury Group is streamed live on Rover, Sky TV, YouTube and Facebook. Proudly sponsored by Wātea, journalism you can trust. Let the arguments begin.
Kia ora Aotearoa. The true demarcation of power in a late-stage capitalism, liberal, progressive democracy is the 1% richest plus their 9% enablers versus the 90% rest of us. Welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. I'm your host, the editor of the daily blog, Martin Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My pronouns are us and we. Coming up on this evening's show, the political panel all-stars tonight are former Labour leader and Auckland Mayor Phil Goff, New Zealand Herald columnist Simon Wilson, Stuff business journalist Dita Boni, and Auckland mayoral candidate Kerrin Leoni. Tonight's 1-on-1 and 10 is Tāmaki Makaurau by-election candidate Peeni Henare. Shout out to Kiwi Skirt and Chewy from BHN moderating tonight's YouTube page. Good evening to all the Bradbury Easters who are watching live right now. Your comments will appear on screen as we go. Shout out to Wātea, Facebook, Rover and Sky TV whānau. And our Twitter panel this evening is Tim Selwyn. He'll be tweeting live online at Twitter, #The Bradbury Group. Before all that, however, is this week's War on News. Brothers and sisters, Minister for Guns at Birth, Nicole McKee, surprised everyone last week by announcing new rules that help the booze industry smother community opposition to opening more bloody booze shops. It was surprising for two reasons. The first is the never-ending love affair this government seems to have for every single industry that damages people, be it oil, tobacco, gambling, property speculation, more cows, and booze. The second reason it was surprising was because Nicole McKee is best known for her relentless campaigning to get machine guns into kids' hands as fast as possible. We didn't appreciate that she can also pimp for the booze barons as well as ensuring every 5-year-old has the right to bear arms. Nicole McKee is a multitasker for deregulation, liver disease, and school shootings. If only this government loved us, the people, the way they love cigarettes, booze, and AR-15 semi-automatics. Talking of loving things you hate, Hobson's Pledge managed to double down on their racist billboard campaign, this time using the images of Rotorua Mayor Tanya Tapsell without gaining her permission. Last month, Hobson's Pledge was caught using the image of a Māori woman supposedly attacking the Māori wards when they didn't have consent or permission to use her image. You would think after that humiliation, Don Brash would be careful selecting his next billboard. Surprise, surprise, he wasn't. Hobson's Pledge did not have Tanya Tapsell's permission to use the image for their attack campaign against Māori wards, and it really makes you wonder if Don or anyone at Hobson's Pledge actually have any Māori friends to put up on the billboards to parrot their confused and stupid manifesto. Why does Hobson's Pledge have to cheat, trick or steal Māori to be in their campaign? Hasn't Hobson cheated, tricked and stolen enough Māori stuff since the signing of the treaty? Is that what the billboards actually are? An art installation of 19th century white settler privilege masquerading as race relations where colonisers steal Māori interests while screaming, "One person, one vote." That joke is far too clever for your average Hobson Pledge supporter. And finally, in this week's War on News, research out this weekend shows that the collapse of the Atlantic Meridional overturning circulation is no longer a low likelihood scenario. It's now a possibility with a 25% chance of it happening. The collapse of the AMOC would see billions impacted and hundreds of millions dead. Brothers and sisters, we're all going to die on a burning planet thanks to the lies of the petro-industrial complex and their polluter mates. To quote the great warrior poet oracle Mike Hosking, happy days. The political panel all-stars are up shortly, whānau. But first, this week's 1-on-1 and 10 with Tāmaki Makaurau by-election candidate Peeni Henare. 1 on 1 and 10. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful. Peeni, a woeful 3,216 votes have been cast so far for the Tāmaki Makaurau by-election. How hard is it for whānau to worry about tomorrow when they can barely keep up with today?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's been the biggest challenge is rising above what our daily grind is and our daily challenges in whānau and communities across Tāmaki Makaurau. And the other one, Bomber, is well known to all of us with the local government election going on at the same time, which, a few doors I've knocked on, I've been asked if I was running for mayor.
Many voters in Tāmaki Makaurau have complained about not being enrolled on the Māori vote roll despite updating their enrolments. And because 25% of the electorate move around, that's a lot of voters being actively disenfranchised by the current electoral system. Should voting be made easier?
Most definitely, and the government's made it clear that their plan is to make it even harder to disenfranchise our people with proposed legislation, meaning that they can't vote on the day. And I want to be clear to all of the voters out there. In this by-election, you can still show up on the voting day, which is this Saturday. Make sure you cast your vote if you cast a special vote. Make sure you register if you need to. But you can still do that this Saturday, and that message needs to be reiterated to whānau right across Tāmaki Makaurau. But to your point, Bomber, this government's making it harder. We know that when this government puts up new barriers, why should our people vote is the question that they're asking me. But I want to just remind our whānau out there that whether you live in the leafy suburbs of Remuera or Mount Eden, or you live in the communities of Manurewa or Mangere, your power in the voting booth is the same.
The government have announced, as you suggested, a voter suppression scheme that will stop enrolment of special votes 12 days before the next election. That impacts 450,000 voters. From your experience of this by-election, do you see those voting rules are enabling or undermining democracy?
Oh, it's clearly undermining democracy. We know that for a lot of whānau, in particular in current times with the cost of living crisis, whānau are they're surviving. Many of them are crowding houses because they can't afford to live, they can't afford to rent. And we know that the laws that this government are proposing will limit our ability to cast our democratic vote, to be able to engage in our democracy in Aotearoa, New Zealand here. And, we're going to be pushing back on this. But of course, we're not surprised by this agenda from this government. And that's why on the by-election campaign, I'm making it clear that if whānau support me and support this by-election, we can get rid of this lot next year at the big general election coming up in 2026.
What are the biggest issues in Tāmaki Makaurau that you're finding out there right now?
It's the cost of living, then daylight, and then followed by that, it's health and access to employment. We know all of those overlap with each other. So I talked with a mum in Otahuhu the other day. She said that she's had to decide on whether or not she buys kai or pays rent, and is hopeful that the landlord can be rather forgiving because she has to put kai on the table for her kids.
Right.
So we know that all those things impact on each other. So without a shadow of a doubt, it's a cost of living. And the sad thing, though, Bomber, is we've seen announcements from Nicola Willis and from this government over the past 5-6 weeks of this by-election of them just simply sitting on their hands, doing nothing to alleviate that pressure that not only Tāmaki Makaurau voters are feeling, but voters right across the country are feeling.
Peeni, last month, a newborn infant died in a central Auckland park while homelessness has reached new unseen-before levels. Aren't those issues more important than the media getting upset about your gang patch ban comment?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's another ploy by this government to distract voters in the whānau from what's really important and what's really impacting Tāmaki Makaurau at the moment. And, last time I checked the Tāmaki Makaurau register, Paul Goldsmith wasn't eligible to vote in Tāmaki Makaurau electorate. So we're focused on the issues. And, when we talk about homelessness, we talk about the cost of living, this government's sitting on their hands. And, our whānau want practical
and achievable outcomes, they're looking to the government for that and they're not getting it. So one of the big parts of our campaign is about talking to whānau about things that governments can do to make life easier, subsidising transport, making sure we can increase competition to bring down the cost of food, etc. But this government, once again, sitting on their hands.
What has been the most distressing thing you've seen out in the community?
I knocked on one whānau door in Mangere where there were 18 people in a 3-bedroom home. And
Wow.
some of them were working, some of them were on the benefit, some of them were really young, some of them were old. And it was just, we see a lot when you're in politics, but 18 people in a 3-bedroom home.
Wow.
And you know what was really awesome, though, Bomber, is they were awesome. And they came out to have a chat with me. We got talking about why it's important to vote and the challenges that they have. And you know what? Despite their circumstance, they're hopeful. So we've got a job to do to make sure that, we represent those people, that we can get real outcomes for those people.
What has been the most hopeful thing you've seen in the community?
We met the whānau at Mate Huruhuru who look after youth, homeless whānau.
Yeah.
And when we were with Mahira and her team, man, I spoke to a young girl who'd been homeless, or young wahine who'd been homeless for 2 years, and now she started her own business. She's got support around her. She talks about hope. She talks about her future. She talks about buying her own home. And this is a young wahine who's 19, turning 20. So, despite all the challenges, we're resilient people, we're strong people, and we're optimistic people, and we've seen all of that throughout this by-election.
What would you say to those voters who feel angry at the government and feel disillusioned with the voting system? Some people out there just say, why bother? What do you say to them?
I say to them that it's important that we practice our mana motu hake. When we talk about what does self-determination look like, we need to be very clear that in order for us to have that, we must exercise our democratic right, which is to vote. And when I'm talking to whānau out there, I highlight that in some countries around the world, that opportunity does not exist. And so here we've got a chance to not only build the momentum through this by-election, but my message has always been clear from the start of this campaign, is that my enemy is not Te Pāti Māori, my enemy is not Orini Kaipara, our collective enemy is this government, and it's going to take all of us, Māori, Pākehā, Chinese, Indian, all of our whānau, to work together in order to change this government.
Preach. Finally, Penny, and I really do hate to bring this up, comrade, I really do. But your beloved Warriors, they got smashed on Friday by the Eels. Is it time to admit that the Warriors are a lost cause and you need to start backing a winning team? Tell us.
Oh, you're killing me there, Bomber. I can tell you we're still positioned in the finals. I think we're going to go pretty well under Fisher Harris. He's going to lead us to the promised land.
Preach.
And it's, as Lapi Mariner always said, it's a matter of faith, brother.
Thank you, comrade. Good luck for the by-election. Be well, my friend.
Cheers, whānau.
Okay, now to our political panel all-stars. Our first panellist is the only reason you would buy a subscription to the New Zealand Herald, militant cyclist and Auckland visionary, NZME columnist, Simon Wilson. Kia ora, comrade. 1 week to the Skype of the week, please.
Kia ora, Bomber. And could I say, just before my one word,
Yes.
Peeni for Mayor, Peeni for Prime Minister. He's having a moment, isn't
People
he?
love him. People love him. People love him.
My word is Clown Guy.
Yes.
I know it's 2 words. Clown Guy. If you want to see a photo of Clown Guy, go to the spin-off. There was a story by Joel McManus there
Yes.
about being on the campaign trail. Clown Guy turned up in Johnsonville and has a fabulous way of, because he's fully dressed up as a very large clown.
Yes.
It's so funny. And he has very subversive politics like, let's stop spending any money at all on road transport, on road maintenance, and use the money just to liven things up. And in that context, the clown turns things upside down a bit, but we have at the moment, right around the country, particularly in the main cities, Auckland and Wellington, a big debate going on about housing density, and it is confusing a lot of people in terms of its politics. The old idea of what's left and what's right for some people is getting thrown on its head. People will remember Helen Clark as an opponent of any kind of apartment density near where she lived in Mount Eden and still lives there. That project went ahead. But that kind of density is coming to a lot more people, and it is confusing a lot of Helen Clark type people.
Yeah.
It is actually a progressive issue, housing density, and it's progressive because it is an essential mechanism for making compact cities that are worth living in and making affordable housing that people can buy and have a life in. And because of those things, it is a progressive issue. But there are a lot of people in Mount Eden and elsewhere who are going, but I live in a villa suburb and it can't be touched. Everything's going to change. Everything always does, and this is part of it.
Our next panellist is the coolest Gen X journalist in New Zealand. Forget Mikey Havoc. Forget Russell Brown. Forget Noel McCarthy. The greatest was always Auckland business editor for the Post, Dita Boni. Kia ora, comrade.
You. Kia
Welcome
ora.
to the show. One word to describe the week, please.
One word, it's not quite one word, but give us your foreign money, I think is the phrase of
Yes.
the week, if we might.
Yes.
Not only can Amazon, please, and Microsoft and so forth build, and I say that in inverted commas,
Yes.
data centres here,
Yes.
but we want rich people buying houses.
Apparently we do. Apparently we do.
And that's the way we're going to get our way out of any troubles we have.
We'll
believe
get
it,
into
don't you?
that. We'll get into that shortly. Our next panellist is the lone voice of reason in an Auckland mayoralty race that has her up against Wayne Brown, the Mr. Burns of Auckland politics. If there is a God, she will win. Auckland mayoral candidate Kerrin Leoni. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome
Kia
to the
ora,
show.
great to be back.
One word to describe the week, please, ma'am.
Oh, tough week on the campaign trail. It's
Yeah.
tough campaighting against someone that's not there.
Yeah,
You're
refusing to
you're
debate you.
campaigning against
Refusing
the
to debate
ghost.
you. Yeah,
And I've just come from an event for the Waitemata councillors,
Yep.
their debate.
Yep.
And again, he was invited but didn't show up. I mean,
Unbelievable.
Waitemata's that's where he lives,
Yeah.
and didn't even bother to show up to a debate in his own ward. So, I mean, what can you expect?
Unbelievable. And last, but certainly not least, former Labour Party leader, former Auckland mayor, and former New Zealand High Commissioner to the UK. That's enough formers to become a perpetual rear view mirror from the House of Gryffindor. One of the few true free speech champions left in New Zealand, Phil Goff. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Oh, kia ora, Bobber. It's a choice. It's could be spring, standing for growth and hope.
Yeah.
We certainly need some of that in
Yes.
the city and the country. The other one that came to mind with the Horizon, the Amazon project was, if it's one word, fake news.
Yes.
Here we are saying, look, we've opened up all of these things, we've changed everything, and look what we've got. We've got $11 billion worth of investment. One problem. It was announced in 2021. That was 4 years ago.
Right.
Nothing to do with the current regime. But there you go. You just got to be really careful about what you believe coming from the mouths of politicians sometimes.
Brothers and sisters, let's get into tonight's show. Issue 1. Is selling our citizenships to reinflate a speculative property bubble really the best economic vision National Act in New Zealand First are offering? Issue 2. Why is Auckland failing? And issue 3 tonight, the International Association of Genocide Scholars declares Israel's actions amount to genocide. What now? Plus, we'll have a final word at the end of the show where each panellist gets to go to the mountaintop to see who breaches broadcasting standards this week. My money is on Kerrin. Let's be honest. She's trouble. She's real trouble. Let's begin tonight's show with the big issue of the week, and that is the extraordinary attempt by the government to reinflate a speculative housing bubble by selling citizenships to wealthy foreign multimillionaires and calling that an economic policy. Dita, you have been on this story from the beginning, and it has been your journalism that has given real insight here. What does it say about this government's desperation for growth that they are going to sell citizenships and pretend that's an economic vision?
Martin, can I be a bit of a devil's advocate here?
Please.
Okay. I don't believe that having lots of rich people necessarily trickles down, because we all know trickle-down theory is a nonsense. However, I do think in this case, in this specific case, this is a sort of a pragmatic solution. So it's these people who are resident visa holders anyhow. They're investing 5 to 10 million in companies, sometimes companies that banks won't give money to. Everyone in this category does qualify to buy a house anyhow. This process just expedites that. And they can buy these multi-million-dollar houses that you and I are not going to be buying anyhow. They're sort of buying them, up against other lotto winners and so forth and other rich people.
Yeah.
I think that the risk will come where scarcity happens, builders and so forth sucked off other more important projects to try and build $5 million homes to get all these people who are coming to New Zealand.
Right.
That is a risk.
Yep.
I think, though, on its face, this is just a pragmatic thing. However, I think the general tone of it is wrong. These guys are going to save us.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
What happens if this doesn't work for the government? Is Plan B bashing Māori more and selling the South Island off to third-tier Australian mining interests? Because if this doesn't work, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
I think
What's the plan B?
Well, the next step would be corporate money, right? Like the Amazon, like
Right.
the Microsoft.
Right.
Like, and it actually might come in again. It might come in more of a quantity,
Right.
unlike today's announcement.
Simon, last month, Matua Winston was attacking immigrants who move here and don't salute the flag. Yet last week, he just allowed multi-millionaire migrants to buy their way into the property market. How can New Zealand First damn migrants one week and then allow them to buy into our housing market the next?
It is so confusing, isn't it, Martin?
Help me. I don't understand.
I'm confused myself. I was up in Warkworth on Sunday
Oh,
listening to Shane Jones.
Were you allowed?
Yeah, I was the only journalist there, and they welcomed me in. Shane Jones spoke to a room, a packed hall,
They love
community
him.
hall
They
of
love him.
300 people, and this is the kind of crowd that turns out to political meetings, and Kerrin will know who they are.
Yes.
They are older, they are wealthier, and they are white.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that critically. These people actually engage in democracy, and that's
Sure.
good for them.
Sure.
But that's who they were. And Shane looked at them and he said, Jacinda Ardern allowed 250,000 people to come into this country, and by the end of next year, they are going to have residency and they are going to be eligible for hip operations. He knew his audience. Wow. They're coming for your hips.
Wow, they're coming for your hips.
And let me tell you,
That's incredible.
His 250,000 number is right.
Yes.
But it refers to the whole 6 years of the Jacinda Ardern,
Yes.
Chris Hopkins
Yep.
governments, plural.
Yep.
Most of those people came in the first term when, of course, New Zealand First and Shane Jones himself were in cabinet.
Right.
It wasn't Jacinda Ardern sitting in a little room by herself signing off visa applications.
Everybody
it
was
was
into
the
it.
government.
Yeah.
It was a coalition government who
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah, for a reason.
Of course.
They
Follow-up
wanted cheap
question.
labour.
They wanted cheap labour, but migration has been the thing that's kept the economy going.
New
hasn't it?
Zealand First voters love to hate vaccines, the trans community, environmentalists, anything to do with the treaty, and, most importantly, immigrants. How does New Zealand First keep their cross-burning members from doing an Epstein files or make New Zealand great again?
Well, the thing that I don't know the answer to that because there aren't that many votes surely in there. And the thing that puzzles me a little bit about it, yeah, I'm an optimist. You know.
Yeah.
The thing that puzzles me a little bit about it, actually a lot, is that at the moment there is a growing cohort, a demographic in this country who are being disenfranchised by the parties that normally have supported them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about tradies, I'm thinking about small business owners, thinking about people who are, you know, we've been told for years by the Nats are struggling, the battlers and the strugglers and all of that, good Kiwi blokes, etc. National Party has no policies for them.
They use small business morality to further corporate interests, don't they?
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
And New Zealand First sees them only as people who have kind of wild, extreme fringe views, which is complete nonsense.
Yep.
And so it puzzles me that the right is kind of moving away from that. And I would have thought that the Labour Party ought to be recognising these people have the potential to naturally go back to Labour. They used to be there, and they could grow with that.
Kerrin, many of our whānau in Auckland can't buy butter, let alone a house. How are foreign multi-millionaires buying the properties of our domestic millionaires going to help with the homelessness issue that we're seeing every day in our country?
Yeah, it's catastrophic, the homelessness issue that we have now, and I think that the latest data that we've seen is that it's doubled and it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And, you know, the real issue that we have is that we know people will buy properties and then not necessarily live in them.
Yeah.
So they're using them as a holiday home or land banking investment properties.
Yep.
And that means that there's less properties available for those families who actually need somewhere to live.
Yeah.
So this is what the big issue is in terms of the ballooning of properties being bought, but not actually addressing the issue that we have for this city, you know, with homelessness and people that need somewhere to live.
Follow-up question. The government says they won't put this in front of a select committee, so Kiwis can't have their say on it. If this idea is so good, why are they hiding it from public scrutiny?
Oh, look, you'll have to ask them that. But, you know, all I can say is from our perspective in local government, it's all about consultation. You know, everything goes out to consultation, and that's what should be happening with this.
Phil, you cannot ignore the interconnectedness of selling citizenships, changing the overseas investor rules to allow property speculation, and the sackings we've seen at the Reserve Bank alongside the government's desire to lower capital requirements for banks. Is there a danger here that the government risks a major economic event if the banks are allowed to lend during a housing crash?
Yeah, look, there's a whole lot of issues to unpack in this. I think that the policy that they've announced by itself isn't going to make a big difference in terms of the amount of investment coming into New Zealand. So I think it's being overhyped. You raise the issue of the sale of citizenship, and you may remember, or members of the panel might remember, a guy called Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's quite important. He's one of the most wealthy guys in the United States. He single-handedly bankrolled J.D. Vance into the Senate and thereon into the vice presidency. But Thiel got citizenship in New Zealand after spending 12 days here. 12 days. The average person has to spend 1,350 days here to qualify for citizenship. Thiel came here. He entered into an arrangement with a government-owned outfit called the New Zealand Venture Investment Fund.
That's right.
They gave him a taxpayer-subsidised loan. He signed up to a deal where the taxpayer took all the risk and he took all the profit. He made $30 million out of that deal without contributing anything substantially, put it in his back pocket and went away. He said he was here for a long-term contribution. He's now withdrawn all of his investment activities in New Zealand, but he's kept the passport. Now, that's a classic example of how this policy can be misused and abused. Even Stephen Joyce, he had to admit it because it was on the front page of the Financial Times in London, how the New Zealand national government could have been so naive to have entered into a deal like this, where this guy just pocketed a whole lot of money. I keep seeing that he donated $1 million to the Christchurch Earthquake Fund. He took $30 million out of New Zealand without any substantial contribution at all. We were taken for suckers.
Wow.
And this sort of thing just needs to be thrown back in the face of the government when they talk about that. Now, look, I don't want to damn all people that we might want to attract to New Zealand. I can think of a perfectly good example that does the opposite. James Cameron, you know, the film director from Hollywood, who's come here, good citizen, followed all the right protocols, stayed here the length of time he needed to, made a real contribution, continues to make a real contribution to New Zealand. But you need to be really careful about the nature of the people that you're attracting here. If you want to get these fly-by-nighters, give them everything. They'll leave you with nothing. They'll take everything. And that's a lesson. That's a lesson that we should learn from this.
Follow-up question, Phil. The Prime Minister bewilderingly revealed that he contacts the Reserve Bank and actively tries to influence them. As leader of Labour, you must have spoken to the Reserve Bank governor at some stage. Did you ever tell them what to do with the OCR, and how concerned are you about the independence of the Reserve Bank?
No, look, any prime minister or leader is entitled to express an opinion. What you're not entitled to do is try to infringe on the independence of the Reserve Bank.
Right.
The Reserve Bank was set up as an independent entity because Muldoon showed politicians couldn't be trusted with money supply.
Right.
Muldoon was the classic. I've just finished writing a chapter on it, where every election, the year before the election, he'd throw a lot of money into the economy. Everything had boomed for election year. And the following year, the brakes had come on. It was a classic stop-go economy that helped undermine and destroy the New Zealand economy and left an economic disaster in 1984. So there's a good reason for the Reserve Bank being independent.
Right.
There's a good reason why we should worry about what Trump is doing and trying to influence the membership. I mean, ultimately, he'll appoint all the members and Powell will go next year. Trump will move to try to control every aspect of American life.
Right.
This will be an American dictatorship if he's there long enough to achieve it.
Quick round to all of you. And I want to look each one of you in the eyes as I say this question, including you, Phil. The last time this government changed bright line rules on property, the current Prime Minister sold 2 of his properties, made $500,000 untaxed, and obscenely escaped $70,000 worth of tax from a law that he changed. The Prime Minister has 2 properties. They're both worth $7 million each. Look me in the eyes and tell me the Prime Minister won't abuse the rule changes again and sell one of those houses off to a foreign multimillionaire.
There's a very
Look
good
me in the eyes,
argument.
Mr. Slack, and tell me that's the case.
I'm not responsible for him.
But
You and
the
I
Prime
could-
Minister of New Zealand cannot change the rules and then personally pocket money.
You and I could stare at each other all night and it would not make the slightest bit of
Come
difference to us.
on! Look into my soul and tell me that's not going to happen.
So maybe what we need is a rule that says if you have a vested interest, you can't take part in the vote. Who ever heard of that? And the most egregious example of that not being done is tax law in Parliament.
Right, Dita, is he going? Is he? Ooh, I will lose my shit if he sells his house to a foreign speculator.
Martin, we voted this person in.
No, you're saying we. Phil Goff just said we before as well. You know,
No, we as
some
in New
of us.
Zealand,
Not me.
we did. We knew that he was wealthy, he had a lot
Yes,
of homes.
he's sorted.
We knew all that.
He's sorted. Any problems with poverty, go make a Marmite sandwich. You cannot,
Yes.
though, change the laws and then benefit, surely. Not personally, can he?
Well, I think there's a lot of people in this country who would do anything to retain value in their property and be able to sell it, and they don't
right.
care. They just don't care.
Kerrin, this can't happen, can it? The Prime Minister cannot change a law and then personally benefit from it financially, can they?
No, but I was going to say that if he does decide to do it, I'd love to take a donation. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. That was a joke. No,
This is
Say
live
he
on
can
air.
get it. He can get it. Phil, we are not going to see a Prime Minister of New Zealand change laws and then personally financially benefit from the results, are we?
Well, look, I think there's a more fundamental issue. That's a pretty important issue, but there's a more fundamental one. There should be a capital gains tax in New Zealand.
Preach.
We're one of the few countries in the world that doesn't have one.
Right.
It's crazy that all of us on wages and salary pay tax on every dollar we earn, but if we sell a property and speculate on it, we pay no tax at all.
Yeah.
And that goes back actually to the foreign foreigners buying houses issue.
Yep.
Remember, the National Party at the last election promised that if they bought that in, they would charge a 15% tax on any foreign investor. Mysteriously, that promise was never fulfilled. So they dumped that. But I would feel better about what they're doing in terms of the sale of properties to foreign investors if they at least made the contribution when they sold that property of a capital gains tax.
Preach.
We need to have that. The Reserve Bank, the Treasury, the OECD, every reputable economist around will tell you that we need that to make sure that there's a fair taxation system across the board. We wonder why the wealthiest families in this country pay on average, the 350 wealthiest families pay on average 9% of their income in tax.
Road
9%.
capitalism. Road
The
capitalism.
average
could
middle
we-
class person pays 20%, and it's because they make their money out of capital gains and they pay no tax on it.
And could
That's
we,
the fundamental
could
issue.
we just add that the law is currently about to be changed so that the mechanism by which it was discovered that the 311 richest families in the country
They're not
are paying
investigating it
reasonable tax,
anymore, eh?
that investigation will not be possible anymore.
Quickly,
won't
just there,
know.
quickly.
And it was interesting to hear the taxpayer union saying this was interfering and bothering people that were contributors to New Zealand. They're the first to jump down the throat of a beneficiary that rips off a benefit, but they don't want to expose the fact that the wealthiest people don't pay
They're
their
also
fair
the
share
first
of
to
taxes.
jump down any lack of transparency, except, of course.
Preach. Now,
Absolutely.
talking of
Absolutely.
I've got some breaking news that's just happened in the last hour, and I need to bring to you all attention and get your thoughts on it. The new Roy Morgan poll has just come out. For the first time, Labour plus Māori Party plus Greens would be the government. Look at the numbers. Labour, 34%. National, 29%. In the death zone for National. Greens, 13.5. ACT, 10.5. New Zealand First, 7%. Māori Party, 2.5. Mr. Slack, that is some pretty amazing numbers for Labour and the opposition. The first time Roy Morgan has shown the opposition to be winning, and for the first time, National in the 20s. Thoughts?
Mr. Slack, did you say?
Sure.
I'll have to have words with Mr. Slack.
Slight slip of the... Mr. Wilson, go for
I
it.
have said for some time, thank you. I have said for some time that whichever party starts to fall significantly behind in the polls will change its leader before the next election. And that's just a function of contemporary politics.
No way.
I think one of the things we have now in society is that we have a volatile electorate that is quite capable of changing elections much more quickly than we experienced in the past. So one-term governments could well become the norm because neither National nor Labour really have a philosophy and a policy platform that will enable the country to get itself out of the situation it's in and enable people to feel confident enough to go on, partly because they're wimps and partly because actually the problems are really severe. And I'm thinking about climate and so on. But this is a very significant shift now.
Dita, those are big numbers.
Big numbers. Roy Morgan is a little bit left.
They are.
So I think take it with a slight grain of salt. But I mean, the trajectory is clear. I've always thought maybe Nicola Willis would step up because what happens, I think, in politics is that women come in when all hope is lost. And our leader comes in.
What else have we got to lose? Put a woman involved. Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right.
Often what happens.
Yeah.
And it always ends well, doesn't it?
Well,
Did for
let's see.
Labour.
What do you want to say?
Kerrin, what do we think?
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's been very close over the last couple of weeks anyway, but look, I think that New Zealand is wanting change. You know, there's a lot of frustration out there right now, and they're looking for that change, and I think that's a reflection of that with the polls.
Phil, one of the things that I think that we were unfair about when it came to Jacinda was that we kind of mocked her whole being nice and being kind.
Who's we?
Well, mainstream media went against her, but with this government, we've seen a level of cruelty and malice that has bewildered us all. And I think we've missed the idea of the state actually being kind and nice to us. These results are pretty remarkable. I don't know the last time the National Party was in the 20s. Do you think that's going to be the moment that they will panic?
Possibly. I'm an old-fashioned politician that often quotes the only poll that counts is the one on the day. So there's water to go under the bridge yet. But the government and the coalition will be worried about the fact that this is not the first poll that showed them behind. There have been a number of polls that showed them behind.
That's right.
And that's a bit of a wake-up call. Christopher Luxon has been white-anted all the time by both Winston Peters and David Seymour.
Yes.
And he's in a particularly difficult position, and he hasn't performed in a way that is particularly spectacular. I think they have cause to be worried. I just want to disagree with Simon about that neither of the major parties offer any difference. Simon, if you look at an area like climate change, you can see a huge difference between the two parties. You know that, and the track record that's been presented. If you look at, would a Labour government have given money back to landlords, landlords that can claim on the interest rate they pay on their investment property when a first home buyer can't? Would Labour have done that? No, it wouldn't. I mean, I think there are clear differences. And if Labour focuses on the things that count for people, then they've got a possibility of an historic one-term national government. Never happened before. It could happen now, but that's not a done deal yet. Don't get triumphalist at this point. Start thinking about the things that Labour needs to do to appeal to that broader group that it needs to win. Because the Party Maori will win a small percentage of the population. Green Party will win a small percentage, but you've got to take one of the centre-left party has got to carry the main weight of winning support that those other two parties can't win. Greens often win votes off Labour. You've got to win votes off the other side to make a difference. Yes. Only Labour can do that.
Phil, I want to say I agree with you. I think I was clearly didn't express myself clearly enough. I think there is a long list of real differences between National and Labour, and it's bigger now than I can remember it ever being.
Right.
I want to say that. What I did say, though, was that I don't think either Labour or National have a bold enough grasp of the policy options that are in front of them to make the kind of difference that we need.
Well, let's get on to this.
But the difference between National Labour is...
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 2 tonight, and that is the decimation of Auckland thanks to this government's policies. Auckland Chamber of Commerce spokesman Simon Bridges says urgent government action is needed to save Auckland's struggling economy. Homelessness is exploding, infrastructure is groaning, and hundreds of thousands need food banks monthly. Chris Luxon says, don't worry, Auckland, I'm going to build a bigger wharf for cruise ships. Simon, you were at the meeting in Mount Eden over the growth pains of Auckland. It was an angry meeting. Will there be more angry meetings?
There will be lots more angry meetings, and there are some complex, difficult issues here, and one of them is that the whole housing crisis is a long continuum which runs from rough sleepers through homeless, the sorts of people that Peeni Henare was talking about before. 18 people, was it, living in one house?
3-bedroom
Just
house.
extraordinary, that kind of... So those people are, most of those people are
Yep.
counted as homeless because they have no viable home.
Yeah.
So that is a continuum through to there not being enough state houses, and the government has stopped the construction of them, not enough affordable houses being built, people finding it hard to get into their first home, all the way through to the argument that you cannot touch my property, you cannot tax me on introduce a capital gains tax if I want to sell it, you cannot build more densely anywhere near my house. All those arguments, they are all part of the same continuum. It is a complex argument. And in Mount Eden, Helen White, the local Labour MP, to her credit, was the only speaker on the night who used the word homelessness.
Yes.
She was the person who said this is part of this larger issue.
Yeah.
She did not get a good reception for that,
Yeah.
even though this was a room full of liberal people.
Yeah.
When it came to their own houses, they didn't want to hear that and didn't want to hear that connection.
Follow-up question. Just want to have a quick chat about poverty and inequality with you. Heard a story last week. Solo mother in a South Auckland home. She had in her cupboards cereal boxes that were filled with rocks, so that when social welfare people turned up and they looked in her cupboard and they checked to see if she had food, they wouldn't take her kids. Now, that to me is such a horrific reality of where we are in 2025 in our city.
Yeah.
And I can't hear, and I don't hear any solutions other than multi-millionaires being able to buy expensive mansions. That ain't going to help that woman, right? She's having to put rocks in the cereal boxes so she doesn't lose her kids. Thoughts?
I have to say the thing about the multi-millionaires buying mansions upsets me, not because of itself, but because I think fundamentally it's a red herring. We should be talking about how are we going to build more affordable homes, how are we going to house the people who need it, how are we going to look after the people at the bottom. And that is the housing issue that the city needs to confront. It's really acute in Auckland.
Kerrin, unemployment in Auckland is 6.1%. It's 11.5% for Māori and over 12% for Pacifica. We were promised growth, and the only growth we are getting is in the dole queues. At what point do Aucklanders start getting very angry by the way this government's treating them?
I think they're already angry. I mean, from what I'm aware, those are the highest unemployment rates that we've had for such a long time.
I can't remember when they're higher.
Yeah, and the issue that we have here is that, under the Labour government, there was a lot more support in place around getting Māori and Pacifica into work.
Yes, the Mana and Mahi.
That's right, the Mana and Mahi, and that transition program, a lot more supports for young people that were coming out of high school to transition into supported living situations as well.
Yeah.
Right now, all of that funding has been cut for a lot of the homelessness initiatives that we have across the city that help young people actually find work.
Yeah.
So people are really at their wits' ends in terms of the the NGOs that are having to do all this work on their own without the funding. I mean, even Dave Latelli has talked about the fact that he's had food parcels, no more food parcels coming from central government, even though they had all the photos with them.
Right.
When they were campaigning.
They'll turn up for
turning up for the photos,
they
but not there to help out
fight.
when
That's
we
right.
actually need to address these issues for our city. So this is where central government should be stepping up to the plate, but they're not.
Yep.
And it's just going to continue under this government.
Follow-up question. Chris Luxon has told Auckland not to worry because he's going to expand the wharf terminal. How does dropping a bunch of rich tourists downtown into Auckland's gridlocked streets, strewn with the homeless, going to produce an economic upturn?
Yeah, it's not. I do support tourism, though, in our city.
We all support tourism, but you can't pretend that's the solution.
No, it isn't. It isn't the solution. And look, I'm just really disappointed to even have Simon Bridges, and the connections that he has within the national government to not have any solutions at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's pretty appalling given that he's in the Chamber of Commerce and nothing has come back along with the Mayor. We should be really leading these conversations with central government to address these issues. And I have not heard anything from the Mayor in terms of all of these concerns aside from his bed tax. I mean, the bed tax is not going to solve the issues for Auckland. And he should be out there on the front line actually visiting these places where supports are needed and looking at finding solutions. And whether that is about him just putting his hand up and saying this isn't good enough, central government. But again, there's none of that happening.
Phil, Aucklanders don't set the immigration levels. Central government does. And for decades now, both Labour and National have used cheap immigration to pump up lazy GDP numbers. Surely central government has to put together a special debt structure to enable Auckland to borrow and pay for the infrastructure that we've been underfunded for decades from. Central government has to pay for the mass immigration policy, surely.
Yeah, I think the Infrastructure Commission makes the point that Auckland, more than any other part of the country, has suffered from a major underinvestment in infrastructure.
Right.
And what's happened recently, just thinking of the last 12, 15 months, first of all, the government cut back the National Land Transport Plan funding for Auckland by 564 million.
Yep.
They scrapped the regional fuel tax that was bringing in $150 million a year, earmarked for infrastructure construction. The houses that were demolished in my old electorate of Mount Roskill, the land has been bare for 2 years.
No way.
Because no building is happening. We've got land waiting to be built on. We've got materials now coming out our ears compared to the material shortages we suffered from 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep.
We've got 18,000 construction workers that have left for Australia. The obvious thing that the government should be doing right now is investing in the biggest city and the engine of economic growth for New Zealand, which is Auckland, in infrastructure and housing. You can act in a counter-cyclical way when you've got the spare underutilised resources. And you need to, every one of those construction workers that leaves, every one of the apprentices that are laid off means that when we get the economic recovery, there'll be a shortage of labour and a shortage of material and a shortage of skilled people, and prices will go up.
Yeah.
So it makes sense because we're not in a high inflationary environment at the moment in terms of building costs, at least.
Yep.
It makes sense to put the money into investment, and what the government has been doing is actually dragging the money out of investment. So that's a fundamental error. That's something they could be doing right now. And when the economy recovers, then they can ease back on their building program because the private sector will take over a lot of it. So it's economically sensible to invest in infrastructure right now, but they don't have that commitment to do that. The bed tax, that's really frustrating. I was frustrated under previous national governments and Labour governments that they wouldn't give us the power to do that. But I got a way around it, which was a targeted rate on property, which the hotel industry, which is now calling out for a bed tax, ironically, took us to the court, held us up for 2 years. We finally won in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But, Mayor Brown right now could, if he wished, use that to raise funds to market this city. So we've got big events here. We've got the International Convention Centre coming soon. We've got the City Rail Link opening soon. You know, those are bright things on the horizon. But we could be doing a lot more. But what I said to the hotel industry is every time we have a major event, you double your rent rate for your hotel rooms and you take the profit, but you want us to pay for the advertising for the event. You make the profit, you've got to contribute to making the event possible.
Preach.
They resisted it then because they thought they could bully me out of it. Now they recognise that they need it. And they do need it. We need a bed tax. I'm in favour of having a new terminal at the bottom of the street because every cruise ship that comes, they spend $1 million, and God knows Queen Street needs it. But there's a whole lot of other things that need to be done as well, including international students. This is, international students are probably the most valuable thing that we could get, the most valuable form of tourism we get. They turn out to be either good permanent residents in New Zealand or good ambassadors for New Zealand.
Yes.
We should be pushing that really hard at the moment, and it's not happening.
Dita, numbers put out from the New Zealand Herald suggest house prices in Auckland have collapsed 19% and 27% in Wellington. How can any government survive price drops that extreme?
They should be able to, because house prices did need to come down. And I think actually you've got to give credit to Chris Bishop for saying that.
Yes,
He came out and said it, and that is exactly right. Look, if I can segue a little bit.
Please.
The problem that we have, and I'm not supporting particular mayoral campaigns, but we have a terrible mayor. Sorry.
He doesn't like people much, does he?
Look, he came in on, and Simon knows this better than I,
Yes.
he came in on a completely unimaginative platform
Yes.
of keeping rates low and getting rid of road cones.
Yes.
Where's the vision? Where is the care and the concern? And he hasn't been able to get his slightly better ideas through because he's so obnoxious to
Yes.
people around
Yes.
the
Incredibly
council
obnoxious.
table
Yes.
that he hasn't even been able to make progress in some of these slightly better ideas that he's had. So I really think I would love to see, and I don't understand why, and I'm presuming that the Labour Party isn't, putting their support through, but why haven't they put, or supported the viable candidate that's standing against Brown, or really gone to town? Why haven't they seen how valuable that position is? I would really like to know that.
Yeah. I've never understood, I compare Phil, your time, and how great you were, and then I listen to the crazy things that our current mayor says, and I'm just like, it's two different worlds,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's almost like Wayne wakes up very angry with the world and just wants to punch everyone in the face, which is fine, but he's the mayor of Auckland, and surely he needs to be a little bit more tactful.
It's just that usual businessman thing of, I know better than this. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to, get involved with politics. Can I just say one more thing on infrastructure, if you don't mind? There was a report that came out from the New Zealand China Council the other day.
Yes.
Take it with a grain of salt. It's written with, pro-Chinese
CCCP,
style of thing. But at that recent infrastructure conference that the government held, they had a whole lot of, engineers, civil contractors, all these big companies, so forth. They had 3 Chinese representatives, all from banks. They had no Chinese infrastructure builders. And as these guys are saying, we build infrastructure faster than anyone else.
Yeah.
We don't need to go into the sensitive areas, say,
Yep.
but a bridge and a road, we can do it.
Surely.
Now,
you'd think.
why? What, are we sort of succumbing to propaganda, anti-Chinese propaganda or something? I don't know.
I just want it
But,
built quick, now.
I think we could look at that more reasonably.
Comrades, we need to move on. Issue 3 tonight is the ruling overnight by the International Association of Genocide Scholars, who have declared Israel's actions amount to genocide. So what now? Phil, you have been a powerful voice of conscience during this appalling violence in Gaza. Israel have argued they aren't committing a genocide and that the mere suggestion is anti-Semitic. 86% of the 500-person panel of international genocide scholars says it is. What now?
Yeah, look, I get a bit pissed off when I get accused of being anti-Semitic because I'm opposed to what the Netanyahu government is doing. There's no correlation between those two things at all. There's not an anti-Semitic bone in my body.
Right.
But I've got to tell you that what the Netanyahu government is doing now is absolutely genocide. And the great irony of this is that the 1948 Convention on Genocide was a direct result of the Nazi Holocaust committing genocide against Jewish people. And now, you know, in an absolute tragedy for Israel, and there are a lot of people in Israel that will feel this as well.
Yes.
Israel is doing to others what it itself was a victim of in the past. There is no question that genocide is happening. Look, 50,000 kids have been killed or injured in the Gaza. Now, don't tell me, Mr. Netanyahu, that they are Hamas terrorists.
Right.
They're children, for God's sake. Over 60,000 people, 63,000 people have been killed. They are now moving people for the umpteenth time from one part of the Gaza to the other. And as the people move out, they destroy their homes.
Yeah.
What's that about? That's about making sure there is nothing for them to go back to, because people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in the cabinet want the Palestinians out of Gaza. They want the Palestinians out of the West Bank. All of those, the Association of Genocide Scholars found that every one of the definitions of genocide was met by what the Israeli government was
Right.
doing. And the tragedy for a lot of Jewish people, I've got some really good friends in Israel, and I communicate with them, and they say they are deeply ashamed of what their country is doing now, which was not about the survival of their country as a Jewish state. It's about the survival of Netanyahu,
Yes.
because as soon as the war ends, he will
Yes.
face criminal charges, and he's looking at his own self-preservation. The case is overwhelming. Groups within Israel, as well as groups internationally, the United Nations, they're murdering journalists, they're murdering aid workers, they're murdering medical workers, they are starving people, and Netanyahu says there's no famine in Israel. Even Trump, for God's sake, says we've seen it. We know it's happening. It's real.
Right.
This guy is getting away with murder. You say, what now? I want to see our government actually taking a lead on this, not being a slow follower. I mean, at the moment, they won't even recognise the Palestinian state as an entity, even after our like-minded countries like Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom and France have all done that. We'll be the last country that recognises the Palestinian entity. And why do we have to do that? Because Israel has a deliberate policy reneging on its past promises of a two-state solution to actually destroy any part of the West Bank or Gaza as a home for Palestinian people who have lived there for thousands of years. That's wrong. We should be speaking out. We should be imposing sanctions.
Preach. Dita, as horrific as what we have seen in the past 2 years, the planned forced displacement of the remaining million Palestinians to rebuild Gaza will be even more harrowing. What's the end game here now?
Well, I think the end game is the worst thing you can imagine, because nothing has stopped the worst things happening so far. Personally, I think the violence will continue. But what I would like to see is organisations like FIFA and UEFA kick Israel out of their sports competitions, because I think things like that, cultural things, university, coexistence and co-studies and things. I think there has to be a really concerted effort, especially from Europe, to really put sanctions on in various ways. And I think that might have some effect, but I don't hold out much hope, to be honest.
Kerrin, this appalling violence is many, many, many miles away from our shores, but you can't help but be shocked at the terrible atrocities. Is there an obligation for those of us living in peace to make a stand against this type of violence?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really proud of the great support that we've had here in Auckland, Tāmaki Makaurau, on Saturdays. I have also been able to be at one of those events and do a speech alongside others like Chloe and other politicians that were down there. And, that is what leadership is all about.
Right.
We are the biggest city in this country. And again, it was another event of where's Wayne? Nowhere to be seen.
Where's the leadership? Where's the leadership?
Look, I mean, the Mayor of Sydney showed leadership over there.
Right.
Where is our leadership here? The biggest city in the country. We've got thousands of people marching through the streets because they know it's unacceptable what is happening over there. And I wake up every morning, I've got my 8-year-old twins, and I'm so grateful that they're not exposed to any of that type of life. But we have to actually show as a country and as a nation and as a city that we're going to take a stance. So,
Amen.
I do want to acknowledge those that are organising the events, and I know that there is going to be a march over the Harbour Bridge as well, which I'll be joining.
Simon, is it embarrassing that David Seymour has built an illegal settlement on the Prime Minister's balls and we're still dragging our heels on recognising the Palestinian state? That is shameful, is it not?
Well, I was surprised to hear there was an association of genocide scholars, and maybe that's my naivety, but that tells me something, that if you want to diminish the cause of the Palestinian people in some way by saying it's a protest movement or it's politicised or it's really just Hamas or whatever. The existence of an association of genocide scholars tells you that there is a body of serious, considered, careful thinkers who are deeply knowledgeable and have spoken on this.
Right.
They're nobody's puppets.
No.
They're there because of how serious it is, and they've done that. And that seems to me that it has enormous weight. Yeah. And just to pick up on something that Phil said, it's important to recognise the Palestinian state, not because you believe that there will be a two-state solution by the end of the year or next year or this decade or whenever. It's important to recognise it because that is a way of saying these people have a right to exist.
Yeah.
And that's the formal way in which you can do that and move forward in the debate. Not saying it, more particularly refusing to say it, is a way of saying they don't have that right.
Exactly. Comrades, we need to wrap the show with a final word. Kerrin, your final word this week, please.
Get ready to vote.
Preach. Dita.
Supermarkets. Wah. Didn't work. The New Zealand initiative wrote the bloody law,
Still didn't
seemingly.
even get it. That's right. Simon.
When people tell you that with the housing density argument, it's all very well, but there isn't the infrastructure, that is just a nonsense. That's the latest nonsense of people who want to stop more housing being built in the city. In 2016, when Auckland adopted the Auckland Unitary Plan, which allowed for a capacity of 900,000 houses, they didn't have the infrastructure in place for that either. Complaints about that at the time. The point is that a 30-year plan, in the time of a 30-year plan, you build your infrastructure. It takes place step by step. We're not going to have 2 million homes. We're not going to have 2 million more homes, as a lot of people keep saying. We have simply a proposal to have a capacity for 2 million homes, which will allow homeowners and developers the choice of where to build and will not be told exactly what to do. And that's all it is.
Phil, your final word this week, please, sir.
Yeah, well, I think intensification around transport hubs is the way that you deal with the problem that Simon's just talked about. And of course, light rail, in whatever form it should take, whether it's overground or underground, would have created the ability to cater for 25% of the population growth along that corridor for Auckland for the next 30 years. That was another piece of funding that was pulled out of Auckland, alongside the smaller amounts like, the 564 million I talked about in the National Land Transport Policy and the money from the regional fuel tax. So, all of the long-term thinking and what we need to do to build a better city has just been swallowed up by short-term thinking again and a failure to invest in the areas that we need for the future. It's like building a 4-lane bridge over the harbour Bridge in 1959 that 8 years later had to be doubled in size. We've got to start thinking on the scale that we need for the city that's the economic engine of New Zealand.
Thank you, comrades. Very quickly, my final word. Nationals in the 20s and that Roy Morgan, and the clock is ticking on Luxon. He will be gone before Christmas. Preach. In solidarity, the revolution continues. Ka pai Aotearoa, hooray!